All right, you need to tell me if I need to move or if I'm okay.
Oh yeah, you are perfectly centered.
Or I could go to no background, Marley. It's up to you.
Well, where are you sitting? Are
Yeah,
you in a?
I'll show you. Hold on just a second here. Go.
Oh, that looks fine.
It's my basement.
Yeah. Wow, you got a nice collection.
There's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah. Um. All right. So I guess many years ago, you brushed shoulders with the greatest of all time. What was that experience like for you?
Well, when Jeff Jordan came to play at the University of Illinois, we all knew that there was going to be the possibility that Michael would come to some of our games. And so there were several meetings that were happening to make sure that we could handle the amount of attention that Michael would gather when he came. So in fact, we talked to several of his, well, especially one of his assistants who, her name's Esty Portnoy. And if you watched the Last Dance, she's one of the executive producers for the Last Dance. So I've talked to Esty several times on the phone. And so they were certainly interested in how things would be handled when Michael came to the games. And they asked that we have one person kind of be the contact for when he was coming into town. And so that ended up being me. And so that was fun, that was knowing that we also, because we knew that the celebrity that Michael was, for him to just come through the main gate would be difficult. He was, as you can see, how many of the fans who wanted to be around him. It was still that way when Jeffrey was playing here. So we actually got NCAA waiver to allow him to have a special parking spot in the tunnel loading dock area there at the assembly hall. And so he would call me the day that he was coming, say, "Hey, I'm coming to the game." And then he would call about when I'm about 10 minutes out. And so he would call me. And so I would usually walk down and let the folks at security know that Michael was 10 minutes away and they could be prepared for when he came in and where they would park him when he came in. And I usually had his ticket. So he would come in, I'd hand him his ticket, and then he'd come kind of in. And at that time, the player parents sat in the end zone in the old configuration. And so he could come up the tunnel and just kind of walk right in and sit in the bleachers with the other parents. And then when the game was over, he would kind of quietly, usually with a few seconds left or right at the buzzer, just kind of escape out and head home. So I can tell you that every time that when his name would pop up on my phone, your heart skips a little bit of a beat when somebody who was the most famous athlete in the world, right, the most recognizable athlete in the world, would call. That was kind of a make your heart skip just for a second, and then you just handled our business. So it always made for an interesting time when he would come.
Yeah. What was it like, getting a phone call from him and then to the first time you actually saw him in person?
Yeah, well, he had come down with Jeffrey before the season started, so I had a chance to quickly meet him before. But at that first game, he knew who I was, and so he knew I'd be there waiting for him. And sure enough, it was cordial, quick. I mean, it wasn't like we sit there and hung out and talked for a long time, but it was small talk on the way up to the seat. And then then the game would start. And he wouldn't get there very early. Normally he would get there right at game time or right after it started, so that it wasn't too much fanfare when he came in. We also had during Jeffrey's time, we played at the Maui Invite in Hawaii, and Michael came out to watch the games there. And so we worked with our ticket office, worked with the folks at the Maui Invite, and in our seating area, we actually created a little area for Michael to sit, where he could have a little bit of a buffer zone from fans around him. And he wore his Illini shirt, and he enjoyed his time in Maui. And but that was kind of a special deal, when Michael shows up with an Illinois shirt on at the games. and watching his son, play on the team. And so that was a special deal. And having someone like myself who grew up watching the games and following those teams, I realized how special a moment that was, and how that wasn't something that happens very often to. Uh, sorry,
That's okay.
I'll start over again with that one. Being someone who followed the team, the Bulls, through that period, and knowing the championships and how popular Michael was, and knowing he was really the greatest player of all time, it wasn't lost on me that how special a moment that was to be able to meet with him and talk to him for even maybe a short moment. But I just tried to play it as a professional. I didn't get all fanboy on him and ask for autographs and do pictures and stuff, because it was our job to make him feel comfortable when he was on our campus, and he was really there as a father, and that was our job, was to make him feel comfortable and enjoy his experience there, so he would come back.
What did you have to do as far as maybe some kind of crowd control things or media availability? I'm sure a lot of people probably wanted to talk to him and get autographs from him. How did you control some of those things?
Well, luckily, our parents, the other parents of the players, really treated him and understood what Michael and who Michael was, and treated him just like another parent. And so there wasn't a lot of ogling and autograph hounds in that group. They treated him like another parent, and they knew he was there to watch his son play. Um, I did get a lot of media interviews from a lot of our media who were at the games. But part of my job was to say, Michael just isn't interested in doing those. Everything that he did would have to be set up through SD Portnoy, and SD wasn't at those games, right? And so, but my job there was to be a little bit of a buffer between, and just politely say, listen, Michael, nothing against you guys. He's just here to watch his son play and really doesn't want to do media stuff. And so that's what we did. Where those seats were located, there was a wall, some space there. So the people who sat at the very bottom of what was called A section at the time, and where he was seated, there was a little space there. So it wasn't like people could really get to him. Our goal when he came to our games was that he could be just like a dad who was coming to watch his son play, come in, enjoy it, and then be able to leave without being hounded. And I think we accomplished that.
Do you have any fun stories or any kind of fun interactions that you two maybe had in the time that you worked with him?
So one time, as school got started in the fall, really before the season got started, the Today Show at NBC contacted us to try to set up an interview. I think they've been trying to set up an interview with Michael for a long time, and he declined. Their hook for the story was, your son's playing college basketball. You're the greatest player of all time. We want to talk to you and Jeffrey about, what it's like to watch your son play, and then what's Jeffrey, feel like playing at this, at a school, at a Big Ten school, but also having a father like yourself. And so it took several weeks to really kind of pull all this together, to coordinate this thing. Matt Lauer came to Champaign. Today they brought a whole crew in, and Jeffrey was already here, but Michael agreed to drive down for the day. And so we set up a place at Ubben in the practice facility for where the interview would go. And it was pretty early. I think it was like at 9 o'clock, or it was fairly early. It seems to me the fairly early start for the interview. But Michael, he had a red sports car, rolls into the parking lot there. I'm pretty sure he had a cigar, and we see that a lot in the documentary, right? The Last Dance. He likes his cigars, and so Michael got out, and they had a chance to do the interview. And I think it was a nice story. It was a nice story. It was good for Jeff. It was good for us. I'm sure NBC loved it because it was Michael Jordan. He wasn't doing many interviews at that time. So at the end of this whole interview is done, he gives me what's the best way for me to get back to the interstate? And so this is where I stepped in and I could give him directions. And I had to send him down St. Mary's Road, which was before it was repaved. So there was kind of a rough road. I said, I hate to send you down here, but the easiest way out is just go down St. Mary's Road, take a left on Lincoln Avenue, and it'll take you right to the interstate, and then you're heading north. So he gave me the thanks, my friend. And so when he's called me his friend, I really felt like we were really tight. Knowing reality is that, I was just there to help facilitate things. But I can remember, there went his car, down the road, and off he went. So, it was disappointing that Jeff transferred for his senior year. He went to Central Florida for his last year. I was looking forward because I think Jeff was probably going to get on the floor a little bit more as a senior. And I think Michael probably would have come to a few more games. I might have hit him up for an autograph during that last year. But still having him through here, various times during those 3 years was fun, is exciting. And, we hope that Michael enjoyed his visits here.
Yeah. I think that's so funny. Even the greatest basketball player of all time needs directions.
He needed directions out of here. This was,
He's just
before we all had our GPS, our phones and stuff. He just wanted to know how to get the heck back out of town back to Chicago. In 1990 would have been, I think, the 89-90 season. The Bulls played an exhibition game here and in Champaign before the season started. And we had a pretty good team. In fact, Kendall Gill was a senior that year. Steve Bardo was a senior that year. And Kendall, obviously, being a Chicago guy, idolized Michael. And so we helped arrange for a photo with Kendall and Michael after they got done, out of the locker room. But my job that night was to deliver stats to the locker room, and so I had a stat page, and I ran it down to the locker room, and I walked in. The only two guys in the Bulls locker room was Michael Jordan and Stacey King, and so they each wanted a stat sheet. And that's the one time I asked Michael, could you sign my one of these stat sheets for us? And he gave me an autograph on his stat sheet. So I still have that somewhere. But that was my one time that I did that. But I will tell you, watching The Last Dance has been amazing. The worst part of the whole thing is it's going to end this weekend. I wish there was more of it because I can't get enough of just the raw honesty behind the scenes stuff. I think it's terrific. And the type of competitor that Michael is, it really shows. And the fact that how he wanted to bring along his teammates to championship level has been real interesting to watch. So I wish we had more of it.
Yeah. And I feel like with The Last Dance, a lot of people like it because it humanizes Michael Jordan a little bit. Do you feel like maybe you kind of got that beforehand, just being able to see him in a situation where it wasn't, I'm watching him on TV or I'm watching him play a basketball game?
Yeah, I think being around him in some of those situations does humanize people, and you do realize that they're just people. And I've been fortunate to be among a lot of people, high-profile people during my career, and most people are just regular folks who want to be treated just like you and I. And you can talk to them, and they'll respond the same way. It's just a guy like Michael, who was the most recognizable person in the world at that time, probably, is a little different level. And so he understood what his situation was. He understood how people reacted to him and the impact he had on other people. But I think I hope that he appreciated the fact that when he came, we treated him with respect and just tried to make it as comfortable as possible for him to enjoy watching Jeffrey play.
For sure. How long have you been working with DIA?
So, since the late 80s, I started as a student and a grad assistant in 1987. I was a grad assistant in that year, so the fall of '87. So I've been around the department for a long time, and so I was very young in my career when Michael's team, when that Bulls team played here for that exhibition game. So I was still kind of a fanboy at that time.
Then you grow up. How many games did he come to maybe in total over the course of that 3 years?
It was a handful. I'm trying to think. It wasn't a lot. I mean, it was probably, I would say 6 or 8 games he probably came to. Juanita, at that time, he and Juanita had already split,
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey's mother. Juanita and Jasmine, I think, was the daughter, was Jeffrey's sister's name, and Michael, Juanita's daughters. And they would come to games probably more often than Michael did. But it was probably 6 or 8 times during those 3 years. So it wasn't on a regular basis. It was a handful of times, but enough that were pretty memorable. You know, I did one time, I did know he was coming in. I did have my son with me, and he was probably 10 or 11 at the time, and well after Michael's career was over, but he still understood. And so I did introduce, he got to shake Michael's hand that one night. And so that, you know, I hope he appreciates that, and knowing and watching the shows now, I think he appreciates that at least he had a chance to meet him one time.
Yeah. What was that handshake like? The first handshake with you guys? I can only imagine his hand probably just like swallowed. Like,
Yeah.
he's a big guy.
Yeah, Michael he has big hands. Obviously, you watch him control a basketball, and he's got long fingers and big hands. A lot of athletes have big hands, and so those are things that you remember about people. And he validated how big his hands were when you shook his hand. It did swallow. I happen to be a fairly big guy myself, so it wasn't like I was totally enveloped. But you know, you could tell he had special finger length that makes him a different player, part of his persona, what made him a special player.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Ken. Well, anything else on your mind before I let you go?
No, I'm trying to think if there's any other good stories from that time period. So there's Ty right now calling me. I'm
You're a busy guy.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. That was basically it. You know, we would just try to get him in and out, and try to get him in and out as efficiently as possible. And
Yeah.
but yeah, getting the phone call was always kind of a fun, and that's one of my favorite stories to tell. You know, that he would always answer. You know, hey, how's it going, my friend? And so I took that as, you know, we're really tight. So I always want to believe that anyway.
For sure. Well, I mean, do you still have his number on your phone?
I still have it. I don't know if it still works or not. I'll be honest with you. I texted one time a few years ago when Johnny Red Kerr, who was a former Illinois player, was going to be inducted into our Athletics Hall of Fame. And so I texted Michael because they had a relationship from his time with the Bulls. Red Kerr was on the radio voice with the Bulls for years and years, and so they had a little bit of a give and take, that Michael would always clap his hands in front of Red with the talc powder and stuff like that before he went onto the floor. And so I did text and just say, hey, Red Kerr is going into our Hall of Fame. Would you be all interested in recording a short video that we could play at our induction?
Yeah.
And he didn't get back to me, so I don't even know if that phone number still works or not. I went through his SD, and SD declined, which wasn't surprising. But yeah, I don't know if that phone number still works or not. But I still do have it on my phone because it's a good conversation starter forever. Who's the most famous person on your in your phone list? I can pull that one up.
Michael Jordan. How about that? Awesome stuff. All right. You keep him busy, I take it? I mean, I can only imagine you guys are.
Yeah, you know, things have slowed down just a little bit. It's not quite as crazy. We were doing interview stuff every day, especially with things like with you and with our media. Yeah. Things have slowed down a little bit. We're doing some award stuff here. Finals are going on, so a lot of the students, there's just not a lot of stuff that's happening right now. We're starting to really get into now let's start planning for a return, and as much as we can, knowing that there's a lot of decisions to be made at a lot of different levels before we can do that. But we can at least have a plan in place of, you know, what teams can we get back on campus? When can they come back? When they do come back, how can we get them back in a safe, and what's our plan with them when they get here? When can they start working out again? All those type of things, right? And so there's a lot of different people working different areas on kind of that return to play, return to the office plan, so that we can have that ready to go when we're giving the thumbs up.
Yeah. Has this coronavirus thing been one of the, I guess, maybe like bigger things that's kind of happened in your career that you've had to deal with?
it will go down as the biggest disruption in all our careers, I believe. There's certainly been nothing that disrupted what we do on a daily basis like this, right? That shut down industries and events like this has. And let's hope that nothing ever comes along that does it again. It affects, has affected millions of people, taken, millions of people out of their jobs. Sports is because it's my career, it's very important, but it's important for people to get to watch and to be a part of it. It gives them an escape, and to take that away, we all miss it. We all miss that competition. But there's a lot of other people that, their careers are on hold right now because of it. And so we're, hopefully we'll get through it quickly, but is total disruption. There's certainly not even anything that's come close, and let's hope that there's nothing that comes this close ever again in our lifetimes.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. All right, Ken, thank you so much. I really
All
appreciate
right, Marlee, have a good rest of your eevening.
it. You too.
We'll talk to you soon. All right.
Bye.
Bye.